I'm sure you've heard by now that Amazon Prime just released a new 4-part docuseries called LuLaRoe. The series chronicles the dramatic rise and equally dramatic fall of an MLM company called LuLaRoe, otherwise known as that god-awful leggings company. As a quick refresher, MLM stands for multi-level marketing. It is a type of business structure that utilizes a non-salaried sales force. This sales force is compensated either by earning commissions off of the products they sell to customers or through recruiting others into the company under them and earning a percentage off of the sales and purchases of their recruits. MLMs are often compared to pyramid schemes because it's been demonstrated that more money is made through the recruitment of others into the MLM than from actual product sales to outside customers. If you want to know more about MLMs, my entire channel is dedicated to exposing these schemes, and I have plenty of content that goes more in depth on how MLMs operate, how they lure people in, and how they harm those involved. LuLaRoe has received rave reviews, despite LuLaRoe reps' best efforts to sink the docuseries ratings. They swarmed the series with 1-star reviews shortly after it premiered in early September. However, much to current reps' dismay, the series earned itself a 5-star rating and is one of the most streamed shows on Prime right now. The documentary team interviewed LuLaRoe founders Deanne and Mark Stidham, a Mormon couple that, unsurprisingly, had previous ties to the oldest and largest MLM company around, Amway.
My parents were Amway distributors in the 60s.
Have you ever been involved in multi-level marketing?
Yes.
What multi-level marketing?
I tried to do Amway.
In my opinion, both Mark and Deanne have personalities that, especially when combined, naturally lend themselves to the con man role. Mark, who runs more of the operational side of the company, has this way of watering down the truth to make it more palatable. At one point during the series, he claims that LuLaRoe isn't really multi-level marketing and that he likes to call it mid-level management, even though LuLaRoe possesses every single trait that fits the definition of an MLM. In my opinion, it was a not-so-subtle attempt at distancing his company from an industry with a bad reputation. Deanne, who in the documentary recounts how she started LuLaRoe by selling maxi skirts out of the trunk of her car, feigns a bubbly, albeit slightly ditzy personality while being interviewed by the documentary crew. Actually, one of the big things that stood out to me while watching LuLaRoe was just how different Deanne acted while being interviewed versus how she acted in the court footage they featured from when LuLaRoe was being sued by the Washington State Office of Attorney General. In the court footage, she came off very lackluster. She seemed to almost not take it seriously. I mean, she was being deposed, which would put anyone in a bad mood, but it went beyond that. Her personality was completely different. While being interviewed for the doc, both she and Mark presented LuLaRoe as Deanne's passion project. They tried to frame her as the ultimate girl boss of all girl bosses. But then in the court footage, she's asked for the address of LuLaRoe headquarters, which she answers with, "I don't know."
What's the address of the building?
I don't know.
Yeah, I can't say I've ever heard of a boss who doesn't know the address of their own company's headquarters. I think this just goes to show how much of an act a lot of this MLM stuff is. It's all smoke and mirrors. Enthusiasm and excitement is really played up in order to lure unsuspecting people into a losing game. The doc also featured the stories of many LuLaRoe consultants, most of whom had left or been terminated. Many of them recounted the struggles they faced being involved with a company that grew far too big for its britches. The thing with MLMs, or product-based pyramid schemes, is that they're always destined for collapse. When your company is only sustained by the constant influx of new recruits, there's only so long you can go before there just isn't anyone left to recruit. What was different with LuLaRoe, though, is that it grew in popularity far faster than most MLMs. The company was only founded back in 2012, but by 2017, they had more than 80,000 distributors. This unprecedented growth really allowed us to watch an MLM collapse in on itself in real time. What made LuLaRoe's collapse even more terrifying was all the insider information that came out about the company as reps started leaving. And LuLaRoe really did a great job at documenting all of this tea spilling. As a viewer, I was left with the feeling that even for an MLM company, LuLaRoe reached new levels of insanity. So, in an effort to keep new people from joining this truly awful company, I have compiled a list of the 5 most terrifying things that I learned about LuLaRoe from watching the LuLaRich documentary. Recruits were asked to sell their breast milk. One of the defining features of an MLM is that you have to pay in order to join. Most companies require new distributors to purchase a starter kit that includes some of their more popular products, along with training materials on how to build your business. A typical starter kit is around $100. However, many companies offer multiple starter kits, all at different price points, and often new recruits are pressured into buying the more expensive kits because they're told that investing more initially will increase their rate of success long term. Of course, MLMs make a big chunk of their money off of selling these kits to their own distributors, and the more expensive a kit is, the more money the MLM makes. LuLaRoe took things to a whole new level. At their peak, they had some of the most expensive starter kits in the MLM world. In order to join, a new rep would have to buy a starter kit that ranged anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. That's a really large investment for most people, and a lot of people just simply don't have the money on hand to invest in the first place. So in order to get people to join, high-ranking consultants in LuLaRoe started encouraging new recruits to open up credit cards, borrow money from family, or even sell their own breast milk in order to pay for the starter kit.
And she found out that she could supply some of her breast milk and sell it to the NICU units to help those infants that are in the NICUs, and people pay for that. And she's been doing some of that to save some money to get her initial kit. And she's so excited to start LuLaRoe and do it without getting into debt, and yet helping some other people and these babies as she is getting into her business.
So she saved $4,500 so far from selling her breast milk into the hospital NICUs. And I was blown away. She is so excited. When we came out of there, she talked to us at first, and she came back over and started talking to us. And her excitement for what LuLaRoe can offer her is just, it's contagious. I gotta tell you.
She said, I cannot wait to get my business started because I know that LuLaRoe will provide me the way to be home with my children and not have to work these crazy shifts at the restaurant.
Now, I don't think that there's anything wrong with selling your breast milk if you're in a pinch and really need some cash, but being encouraged to sell your breast milk so you can join a pyramid scheme is a whole different story. Since LuLaRoe has been in rapid decline the last few years, they've dropped the price of their starter kit significantly. It now only costs $499 to join.
$4.99? Are you out of your mind? That's how I feel about this deal. Like, are you out of your mind? Are you insane? You must be crazy. Because if you had told me that I could have signed up 5 years ago for $4.99, yeah, there would have been no question in my mind, you know? There was a little bit of hesitation when it was $6,000, right? I mean, that's a little bit more of an investment going into it, wouldn't you say?
Almost $500 is still a lot of money. And although I hope that people aren't still selling their breast milk in order to join, I wouldn't be surprised if that's still happening. Mark and Deanne's family control everything. As I previously mentioned, LuLaRoe founders Mark and Deanne are Mormons. Family is extremely important in the Mormon faith, and they believe that one of their main responsibilities here on earth is to be fruitful and multiply. In other words, they have a lot of kids. Mark and Deanne have 14 children, 3 of whom were adopted. 2 of their children actually ended up getting married to each other, which Mark and Deanne are shown laughing about in the first episode of LuLaRich.
So out of our 14 children, 2 of them are married to each other. So it's like...
They do go on to explain that one of the kids was adopted and that neither of them lived in the house together growing up, but it's still a bit strange, in my opinion. When LuLaRoe first started taking off, Mark and Deanne basically offered their children first dibs in the company. Many of them ended up being hired into executive positions, whether they were qualified for these positions or not. So yeah, nepotism kind of runs rampant in LuLaRoe. In the doc, Deanne's son, Kenny Brady, who became vice president of sales, is shown basically having a meltdown while recounting the story of Mark and Deanne asking him to join the company.
They asked for our help.
Kenny goes on to say, while continuing to tear up, that Mark and Deanne don't care about having LuLaRoe for themselves and that they really care more about helping their children and other families who join. I found that rather hard to believe, considering both Mark and Deanne live an extremely lavish lifestyle off the money they've made from LuLaRoe. Deanne regularly goes on shopping sprees for Louis Vuitton purses, and Mark drives around $1 million luxury Koenigsegg cars. But yeah, they really just care about helping others and blessing lives. Sam Schultz, who is Deanne's nephew, was hired on as events coordinator. Sam is a pretty high energy person, and he actually put on a lot of really good events for LuLaRoe. He even hired Katy Perry to perform at their 2017 convention. In the doc, Sam claimed that Deanne actually had a problem with Katy Perry performing because she has a song titled I Kissed a Girl. Surprise, surprise, the Mormons who started a pyramid scheme are also homophobic. Although Sam is an open critic of LuLaRoe, even calling it a pyramid scheme in the documentary, he's not so innocent himself. He reportedly was terminated from the company after it was found out that he had inappropriate relationships with multiple consultants. Then, after leaving LuLaRoe, Sam tried to recruit former reps into a marijuana business that ended up being a Ponzi scheme. He even sent a picture of $30,000 in cash that he had supposedly invested into the business to a woman named Courtney Harwood, who was a former consultant that was featured in LuLaRoe. Courtney told the film crew that she reverse image searched the picture Sam had sent her and found out that he had actually copied the picture from Google Images and was trying to pass it off as a picture he took himself of his own money. There were several other family members that were also given positions at the company, including Deanne's son Jordan, who became the head of leadership and cultural development, Deanne's son-in-law Jeff, who became vice president of finance, Deanne's daughter Emilee, who became LuLaRoe's photographer, as well as many others. Something that wasn't mentioned in LuLaRoe, but I think is still really important to know, is that the few family members that didn't end up working for LuLaRoe still followed in Deanne and Mark's shoes by starting their own pyramid schemes. Deanne's sister, Diane, who actually helped out with the maxi skirt business in the early days, started her own MLM company called Honey and Lace that was a direct competitor of LuLaRoe. She ended up selling the company, and it was eventually renamed to SAVY. Deanne's daughter, Nicole, started an MLM called Smile that sells children's clothing, and Deanne's niece, Buffy, started an MLM called Agnes and Dora that sold women's clothing. Smile is still operational, but Agnes and Dora appears to be defunct. Basically, Deanne and Mark's family, or most of them anyway, are the MLM mafia. The family has quickly grown their fortune by participating in several unethical and borderline illegal business dealings. LuLaRoe artists were stealing from other designers. LuLaRoe uses a marketing tactic known as FOMO, or fear of missing out. They have standard cuts of their clothing, but they're constantly rotating the prints. For every new print their artists design, they only produce 3,000 articles of clothing with that specific print. It's honestly a genius marketing strategy. If a customer sees a print that they like and it happens to be in their size, they're kind of forced into buying it immediately because they'll probably never see that exact item available ever again. During LuLaRoe's heyday, this put immense pressure on their designers. The doc team interviewed former LuLaRoe designer Ileana Estarelas, who said at one point designers were required to make 100 new prints every single day.
But yeah, I was making art with a gun against my head.
The unrealistic quotas caused some artists to start cutting corners. The clothes gradually got uglier and uglier, and sometimes the patterns would be poorly placed on the leggings and would resemble certain body parts, if you catch my drift. LuLaRoe designers also started taking from other artists' work, making a few changes, and then passing it off as their own. They were told that in order to avoid copyright infringement, that they would need to alter the design by at least 20%. But because the demand for new prints was so high, designers would sometimes just straight up steal from other artists' work. In at least one case, a LuLaRoe designer stole art and actually forgot to remove the artist's watermark from the pattern. Obviously, the designers shouldn't have been stealing from other people's work, but personally, I place most of the blame on the company itself for placing such unrealistic expectations on their employees. The overall quality of the clothing suffered as well. Many customers received clothing that would fall apart after one use or that already had holes in it.
These are the leggings I got. This is the first pair I got. Now I did get another pair, which we'll talk about separately. So the first thing that I loved is that, I don't know if you can see it, but my leggings came complete with holes there, and just across the butt in general. This is because it's made with really cheap fabric. So I was like, oh great, so complete with holes. I didn't know they made distressed leggings like they made distressed jeans now. So then I started looking at the leggings themselves. Look at how it's sewn together. Who the hell did the seaming? Like seriously, this is the worst seaming on a product ever. Like yeah, I want a giant unshapen triangle mass on my vagina.
On top of all of this, LuLaRoe was producing so much inventory that they had nowhere in their warehouse to store it. So they actually started storing clothes in huge bins or cages outside in their parking lot where the clothing would be exposed to the elements. Consultants then started getting inventory that had been completely soaked with rain or was moldy and smelled terrible or had spots where it had been sun bleached. LuLaRoe wants women to be submissive. The MLM industry is filled with companies that co-opt pop feminist language in order to lure women into their schemes. They especially target stay-at-home moms who are looking for flexible work. LuLaRoe is no exception to this trend. They use the cheap language of feminism, throwing around words like empowerment and girl boss. They claim to be the way for women to be entrepreneurs and build successful businesses, all while being able to still prioritize time with their family and kids. They claim to be in the business of elevating women's voices in the entrepreneurial sphere. The truth is, though, all of their talk of female empowerment is simply a marketing tool. In reality, LuLaRoe promotes an extremely regressive image of gender roles. This couldn't have been any better exemplified than when the LuLaRich crew asked Deanne what inspired her to empower women, to which Mark interrupted the interview and answered the question for her.
What inspired the empowerment of women for you?
Can I jump in there and then you can talk?
Yeah, because, yeah.
Yeah, I have something that...
Tiffany Ivanovsky, a former consultant who was interviewed for the doc, said that Deanne and Mark basically ignored her and referred to her LuLaRoe business as her husband Paul's business, even though she did 90% of the work. Tiffany and Roberta Blevins, another top consultant interviewed for the documentary, who was also very active in the anti-MLM community, both said that at one point, Deanne told them that if their husbands are concerned about them buying more LuLaRoe, that they should just get on their knees for 5 minutes every day. Deanne said that if they pleased their husbands, then they would be allowed to buy whatever they wanted. This was actually not too surprising to me because I've heard this type of rhetoric being used by MLMs before. Not too long ago, I made a video about a Polish documentary that Amway successfully lobbied to have banned from being shown in Poland. They wanted it banned because it exposed some pretty nasty things about Amway. In this documentary, they include footage taken from an Amway event, and one of the speakers at this event pretty much instructs his audience to do the very thing that Deanne told Tiffany and Roberta to do.
Men are real easy. Wiecie, mężczyźni to jest prosta robota. You can get a man to do anything you want. Naprawdę, każdego mężczyznę możecie zrobić z nim wszystko, co chcecie. Sit up and bark like a dog. Możecie powiedzieć, żeby usiadł i szczegał jak pies. Roll over. Żeby się przekręcił. That's an easy one. To jest bardzo proste. Do Amway. Zrób Amway. You can get a man to do anything. Wy możecie zrobić, żeby wasz mężczyzna zrobił absolutnie wszystko. We're talking 15 minutes. Tak naprawdę, my mówimy, no maksimum 15 minut potrzebujesz.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, though. Deanne's ideology on gender roles seems to have been taken from the teachings of her mother, Maureen, who wrote a book called The Secret Power of Femininity. This book claims to be a guide for women on how to attract and keep a man. In the third episode of LuLaRich, journalist Jill Filipovic reads an excerpt from the book. She read the following. Stand before a mirror in the privacy of your room and say to yourself, I'm just a helpless woman at the mercy of you, big strong men. Stamp your feet daintily, saucily, and shake your curls, as much as to say, I'm furious, but what can a little girl like me do with a big strong man like you? Yeah, yikes. Mark isn't innocent in this either. He perpetuates a male-dominated system just as much as Deanne. Roberta told the LuLaRoe crew that one time at a conference, Mark, on stage, compared himself to Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon faith. He literally compared himself to a religious leader that many believe to be a prophet. Deanne wanted consultants to get weight loss surgery. This has to be the most horrifying thing that was talked about in LuLaRoe. Several of those interviewed said that Deanne would try to convince high-ranking consultants to get weight loss surgery in Tijuana, Mexico. Throughout this series, it's made pretty apparent that Deanne really cares about outward appearance. I mean, from her bleached blonde, blown-out hair, to her bright red lipstick, to her studded designer pumps. It's obvious the woman likes to look expensive. There's nothing inherently wrong with that if that's something that you desire in your own appearance, but if you start placing these superficial expectations on those around you, it can become a serious problem. In LuLaRoe, Deanne talked about how when she was a mom with young kids, she wanted her kids to look good. She recalls wanting to buy expensive dresses for her children and being so upset when she didn't have the money to buy them. Fast forward to the peak of LuLaRoe when it was a billion-dollar company, and Deanne was pressuring top consultants into buying $10,000 designer purses and going with her on trips to a weight loss center in Tijuana.
How many people do you know that had done surgery with Dr. Michelle?
We have lovingly and excitedly referred to I think we brought down 18. I counted the other day, 18 that have come from the United States and from all kinds of states from back east in New York and Utah and Nevada and California and there's several other places I've got to think in terms of, but yes, and they've all lost weight, they've all had success, they're all continuing to see success.
Consultants found themselves being added into a text message group that was named Tijuana LuLaRoe Skinnies, and former consultant Courtney Harwood told the doc crew that she would be regularly messaged by Deanne's sister Lene, asking her when she was going to come down to Tijuana with them. Courtney said that she felt so pressured to lose weight that she opted to have weight loss surgery done in the United States, an option that she felt was much safer. Her body ended up not reacting well to the gastric balloon, and unfortunately, she wound up in the hospital.
I just about died.
When she told Deanne and Lene about what had happened, they basically told her, I told you so, and that she should have gone with them to Tijuana. Then, when Courtney flat out told them that she wouldn't go, Deanne started acting differently towards her. To me, what's really upsetting about all of this is that LuLaRoe presents itself as a size-inclusive company. For years, they have used plus-size models in their marketing campaigns, and they offer most of their clothes up to a size 3XL. So it's pretty disturbing that this is how they present themselves to the outside world, but then behind closed doors, the founders are looking down on women for not being skinny enough. What has come out about LuLaRoe is terrifying, even for an MLM company. What I do suspect, though, is that the disturbing things that were, and probably still are, happening in LuLaRoe are happening in a lot of MLM companies. MLMs are cults, and they're really good at keeping their skeletons in locked closets. LuLaRoe has been exposed in large part to the many ex-consultants that came forward and shared their stories. Long before LuLaRoe was produced, these consultants were talking back and forth, sharing their stories with each other, and together making sense of what had happened to them. I hope that LuLaRoe helps those who have left other MLM companies to know that they're not alone. And if they ever want to come forward with their own stories, there will be those of us that are ready to listen. Who knows, maybe in the future there will be documentaries produced about Young Living, Monet, or Arbonne. If you haven't already watched LuLaRoe on Amazon Prime, I highly suggest giving it a watch. I honestly barely scratched the surface of all the craziness that was in this documentary, so to get the full story, you really have to watch it. Thanks so much for watching. I've been Taylor of The Antibot. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell. You can follow me on Instagram at TaylorLee_the_antibot, and you can follow me on Twitter at the antibot. If you want to contribute to this channel financially, my Patreon link will be in the description, and I'll see you all on the next one. Say bye.